One must be sane to think clearly, but one can think deeply and be quite insane. If you learn to think with pure clarity, the quality of your thoughts will never be the same. And right now, you're going to learn how you can achieve extreme clarity of thought like the geniuses of history. What you first need to understand is that you need to cultivate a mental landscape. The foundation of clear thinking lies in a serene and ordered mind, which is free from the clutter of distractions and emotional turbulence. If you can remove what doesn't add value and prioritize the things that will add value, you'll think clearer than most of the people. Great thinkers understood this very deeply. They knew that true insight arises not from frantic activity, but from quiet contemplation. By observing thoughts without judgment, you can discern their transient nature and detach from unproductive mental loops. This practice will allow you to see a clear perception of reality. I want you to dedicate at least 5 to 10 minutes to simply sit in silence. Focus on your breath, and whenever a thought arises, acknowledge it without engaging. Let it pass like a cloud, but know where it arises from. When you catch yourself ruminating or worrying, gently bring your attention back to your breath. Do this consistently and you'll begin to see a significant reduction in mental clutter and an increase in your ability to focus whenever you need. The problem is that the modern world is fragmenting your attention. To fix this, you need to engage in prolonged, uninterrupted periods of focused concentration every day. This deliberate isolation from shallow distractions allows for the complex cognitive processing, which is crucial for profound thought. You should schedule at least one 90-minute deep work session each day. During the session, use this time for your most valuable task, such as problem solving or strategic planning. The feeling of accomplishment and the quality of your output from these sessions will be profoundly rewarding. Now that you've learned the basics, let's dive into the deeper knowledge behind the clarity of thought. Sculpting thought processes, you need to understand that clarity is not merely the absence of noise, but the presence of a structured, deliberate approach to thinking. One of the simplest components of this is the first principles thinking. Instead of reasoning by analogy, which can perpetuate flawed assumptions, first principles thinking involves breaking down a problem into its most fundamental truths. This will allow you to see innovative solutions. I use first principles thinking all the time. When facing the problem, I ask why repeatedly for at least 5 times about each assumption. For example, if you believe you must advertise on social media, ask, why social media? The answer is because it reaches our audience. Why does it reach our audience? Because that's where they spend their time. Now, why do they spend their time there? And so on. This iterative questioning will strip away assumptions and reveal the bedrock truths to build your strategy. This process will lead you to surprisingly simple and powerful insights. The next step is to master metaphorical bridging. When struggling with a concept, consciously seek an analogy from an entirely different field. For instance, if you're trying to understand organizational structures, consider a biological system like the human body. How does the information flow? How are decisions made? Articulating these parallels will deepen your understanding and open up new perspectives. I remember that when I was studying about mental resistance before work, I found the answer in physics and chemistry. The start of every activity takes the most energy. This practice will make you experience the joy of finally getting it through an unexpected metaphor. The next principle for clarity of thought is feedback loops. Expertise is not innate. It's built through rigorous, focused practice aimed at improving specific weaknesses, coupled with immediate and informative feedback. Geniuses didn't just practice, they practiced deliberately and pushed their boundaries incrementally. You need to identify one specific area of knowledge or a specific skill to improve, and then define a small, measurable goal to improve within that area. Engage in focused practice with that skill and actively seek feedback from mentors or self-assessment. Analyze the feedback, adjust your approach, and repeat. This will level up the quality of your thinking. For example, if you want to level up your strategic thinking, you might focus on identifying 3 key assumptions in a business plan. Seek feedback on whether they are truly the most critical, and then refine your criteria for the next exercise. The feeling of mastering a skill through this focused effort is completely empowering. The pursuit of clarity is not a one-time thing, but a continuous practice that nourishes both the mind and the spirit. Now you need to understand the power of reframing. How we interpret events profoundly impact our ability to think clearly. Geniuses understood that challenging negative or limiting interpretations can unlock new solutions and emotional resilience. This is about mastering your internal narrative. To be able to do this, you need to master the skill of perspective inversion. When you are faced with a setback or different situation, consciously try to reframe it. Ask yourself, what is the opportunity here? What can I learn from this? How would someone I admire handle this with grace and intelligence? If this was a lesson from history, what would it teach me? Actively constructing a more growth-oriented interpretation can shift your emotional state and open new avenues for clear thinking. As I told you earlier, the most profound insights often emerge at the intersections of different fields of knowledge. History is replete with examples of thinkers who drew from art, science, philosophy, and everyday life to forge new ideas. Now, this requires an open and curious mind and a willingness to connect seemingly unrelated concepts. What I want you to do is to keep a journal where you regularly jot down interesting ideas from various sources, like books, conversations, nature, or even art. Once a week, dedicate time to review these entries and actively look for connections between these ideas. How might a principle from biology apply to marketing? How can a narrative from literature inform project management? Documenting these synthesized insights can lead to unexpected breakthroughs and a richer, more nuanced understanding of the world. The moments derived from these connections are deeply satisfying. By weaving these principles into your thinking, you will be able to think with extreme clarity about the things that matter most. But if you want to dive deeper beyond the foundational principles, there are subtler yet equally impactful insights which will lead you to exceptional thinking. You need to master your internal world. Your ability to think with extreme clarity is intrinsically linked to the mastery of your internal state. The foundational characteristic of many intellectual giants was not the possession of all knowledge, but a profound awareness of its vastness and their own limitations. After researching or forming an opinion, pause and ask yourself, what assumptions am I making? What information might I be missing? Where could my understanding be incomplete or biased? Actively seeking out alternative perspectives can open up pathways to a more nuanced, clearer thinking. You need to control your emotions as well. Intense emotions such as anger or overwhelming excitement can cloud judgment and distort perception. Geniuses understood the necessity of emotional detachment, not to become unfeeling, but to gain an objective vantage point. If you learn to observe emotions without being consumed by them, you could process information with greater rationality. When experiencing a strong emotion, instead of reacting immediately, pause. Imagine observing this emotion from a distance, as if it were a passing phenomenon. Ask yourself, what this emotion is telling me objectively? How would my most rational self respond to this situation, uncolored by this emotion? This practice, much like a mental discipline, will build resilience, a mental capacity for problem solving. The sense of calm derived from this practice is truly profound. And if you want to level up the quality of your thoughts, the next principle is a crucial one to understand. You need to design a clarity zone. You don't need to stumble upon clarity. You should meticulously design your environment to facilitate it. This involves not only by minimizing distractions, but also creating an environment that stimulates your senses and aids your thought processes, perhaps through visual cues or even arrangement of tools. So you need to create a clarity zone. You can add elements that inspire you, like a meaningful quote, a piece of art, a notebook, or a tool. Make this space signal to your brain that it's time for focused cognition. When you enter this space, you will feel a natural shift towards clarity.